Okay, if you are watching this video, chances are that you have either a picky eater on your hands or you have a baby like mine that was not liking a certain food that I introduced, and you're kind of wondering what to do, what you can do, if you should just forget it and move on or what, but I will tell you what I did when I experienced this and how I was able to get my little one to eat. So this is actually week 3 of me introducing foods to my little one. I have introduced green beans, peas, and squash so far. And then this week the new food that we're introducing was the sweet potatoes. So that I figured was gonna go pretty well because it's one of the sweeter vegetables. And actually the day that we introduced it was actually 3 days into the week because we had a couple days left on the butternut squash from the week before. Butternut squash has been great for her. She loved it, ate it up. We increased her serving sizes with that. She was also starting to, want to hold the container, hold the spoon more and stuff like that. And so that actually has, kind of made me wonder if I should be doing some baby-led weaning with her, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But with introducing the sweet potatoes, the first day that I introduced it was in the morning. I do 3 times a day doing foods with her. And in the morning, she ate it no problem. She ate bite after bite, no fuss, nothing. So I thought that, it was going to be, piece of cake. But then came lunchtime. She was very fussy with it, as well as same with dinner time. And I wasn't sure what was going on. I thought maybe, I don't know, maybe she was teething or something like that, or maybe just tired, whatnot, I don't know. So I didn't give out on it completely, but the next day, pretty much every single meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner, she was a huge fuss. To the point where she's throwing up her arms, arching her back, not wanting to eat. And so I didn't know what was happening. The first go was great, and I don't know, so I was kind of at a loss, but I didn't want to give up completely because I typically do introducing a food for 4 days, and I was only on day 2, and in my opinion, I don't want to introduce something new on day 3 because, I don't know, it probably would be fine, but I mean, the doctor recommended 4 to 5 days. I've seen, 3 to 4. So I didn't want to introduce anything new. So I didn't want to, quote unquote, waste a day and not give it to her if I could help it. So what I decided to do was to offer her some peas along with the sweet potatoes. She really liked peas, so I thought, maybe, I don't know, maybe offering that and both, maybe she just didn't want all, was getting tired of the sweet potatoes. So the next morning on day 3 of offering sweet potatoes, I offered her a bite of sweet potatoes just to see if there was any change. Maybe the day before and whatnot was just a fluke. But she took that bite, ate it, but still wanted nothing to do with it. So gave her some more peas, or gave her some peas, and she had a few bites of it, but ended up being a fuss, so we just moved on and ended that session. Lunchtime, did the same sort of deal, offered her some sweet potatoes, not really wanting it, but offered her some peas, and she took more of the peas, took a few bites of sweet potato, so a little bit of improvement there, but still wasn't all that, interested in it. Now at dinner time, I decided to just do her in a diaper and not put a bib on her and see what that would do, because over the last few meals I had also seen her kind of tugging at the bib and kind of being fussy with it. So I was like, well, maybe that's kind of making her fussy and making the entire meal unpleasant for her. So I just decided to try it, and lo and behold, she ate both servings of the peas and sweet potatoes that I was offering her. So could be a fluke, could be that, you know, she was just getting used to it and wanted to have some peas with it, but you know, it seemed that without the bib was better. So I continue to do that over the next few days as well. So then we were on day 4 of offering the sweet potatoes, and that was probably the best day with it so far. She loved it, to the point where she was eating the servings that I gave her and wanting more, so much that at dinner time I gave her, I don't know, probably at least 2 tablespoons of peas and 2 tablespoons of sweet potatoes, and she was still wanting more. She was, you know, holding on to the container that I was feeding her out of, and, you know, chewing on it, licking what she could get out of it. And I don't know, it made me think that I don't know, maybe like I was waiting too long in between me breastfeeding her and when I was offering the baby food, because I asked my pediatrician how much I should be feeding her, and she said, you know, anywhere between, you know, 2 to 4 tablespoons each meal is kind of the threshold there. So when she was wanting more than 4 tablespoons, I thought I might need to adjust when I was offering it to her. So I was typically doing around anywhere between an hour and 30 minutes, but it was probably closer to an hour and 15 to an hour and 30 minutes. So next week I will probably start adjusting to 30 minutes to 45 minutes and see how that does, because as I'm sure you've heard or know, that right now, between like 6 and 8 months, most of their nutrition is still coming from that breast milk or formula. So I didn't want her to fill up too much on the baby food at this point. Now we're at day 5 of sweet potatoes. I know that I said I normally do 4 days of each food that I introduce, but for some reason on the 5th day I realized that it was the 5th day and not the 4th day. But anyway, so it was 5 days of doing sweet potatoes. Same thing, I did it without a bib. She ate both servings, no problem. Still continuing to hold the container or want to hold the spoon. So again, it's making me think that maybe we need to consider doing some baby-led weaning in the near future, just because she is showing signs that she's wanting to feed herself. Now, as I said, later in the week I was offering her like 2 tablespoons of each food, you know, and she was wanting more of it. So I'm going to be adjusting the time that I do between breastfeeding and offering the food, and hopefully that will correct itself. I don't want to say correct it, because maybe she does, you know, need that and it won't change anything, but I'm going to try that. But also, I wasn't always consistently doing 2 tablespoons of each that entire week. So if you actually check out the blog post that goes along with this video, I kind of outline the amounts that I offered to her each time. I also mix in rice cereal every time, and then depending on how thick it is, like with the peas and green beans and things like that, I do add a little bit of water to kind of thin it out, because they're thick to begin with, and adding the rice cereal, it makes it really, really thick. So but yeah, check that out, because I do go over how much I'm offering her. Now, she's not always eating that entire serving, but I do offer it to her, and that's how I do that. Okay, so now just a quick kind of rundown, I guess, of things that I learned this week. So the obvious is kind of learning to experiment a little bit. you know, if your baby is not liking a certain food, don't necessarily like get rid of it. And, you know, I mean, you could shelf it for, you know, a couple weeks and then try it again, because I have seen that be advice for if your baby is not liking a certain food. But just kind of experiment a little bit. Maybe your little one's like mine. She just wants some options. She doesn't want to eat the same thing over and over and over and over. So, you know, try offering it with another food that she has liked in the past. You know, try, you know, without a bib if you think that could be it. That was something that seemed to help in my scenario. Also, you know, temperatures of food. My daughter thus far has preferred her vegetables to be heated up a little bit, whereas, you know, some babies, like my sister was talking that with all of her kids, she never heated up any of the baby food that she offered. So, I mean, every baby is different, but, you know, you may find, you know, those little tricks here and there. I will say, like with the squash, that was probably the one that my daughter liked the most. And that was also one that she was able to tolerate being more room temperature than heated. But she still did prefer it heated. But if, you know, it was in the diaper bag and we were out and about, I could give it to her straight, you know, out of there, and she would be fine with it. So just kind of, you know, play with it, see if you can get things to work. If not, then do shelf it and try it again in a couple weeks and see if there's any change. Now, I did mention that I am considering doing some baby-led weaning. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the term, baby-led weaning is, you know, where you give your baby like actual solid foods, like pieces of food, and just let them kind of gnaw on it, feed themselves, that sort of thing. So the obvious concern about doing that is the risk of choking. Now, if your baby doesn't have teeth, they're more than likely not going to get a whole lot off of it anyway. But my daughter does have those two tiny front teeth, so I would be a little concerned about her getting some chunks off. But in doing some research on baby-led weaning, I did learn that up until about 9 to 10 months, your baby's gag reflex is in the front 2/3 of their mouth, whereas at you know, 9 to 10 months and beyond, even into adulthood, your gag reflex is in the back 1/3 of your mouth. So just with that fact alone, it made me want to consider doing the baby-led weaning even more, just because for me, I feel like it would be better for her to do, or to figure out what pieces are too big for her to swallow now when her gag reflex is in the front, rather than her figure out something's too big and it be in the back and the risk of her choking on it is much higher. So that's kind of why I'm thinking that I might go in the direction of starting her off slowly anyway on some baby-led weaning, and see how that goes. I do have, at my baby shower, somebody got me these, what are they called? I think I wrote it down somewhere. They are called Munchkin fresh food feeders, and I'll go grab one. One second. Okay, so let's see. This is what I'm talking about. So Munchkin is the brand, and they're called fresh food feeders. So those actually, you know, you can put the food inside of them, and then they can, like, you know, chew on that and get the food out of the little holes that are in it. So they're still feeding themselves, but it's not as much of a risk, if you will, of them choking. So I might try that, maybe with some of the sweet potatoes, you know, in the next few days, and see how she does with that. Otherwise, I might just, you know, go full on and do the baby-led weaning itself. One other thing that I did learn, I guess, this week is kind of a continuation of what I learned last week with their poop. I know. You probably never thought you'd be so excited about poop until you had a baby and you're just like, whoa, they pooped. But so, like I mentioned last week, it's gonna start getting thicker, it's gonna change color, the smell of it's gonna get stronger, all that. But not only that, like I've noticed this week that I'm not able to hear her poop anymore. So when it was thinner, you know, anytime she pooped, like it was this, you know, loud, you know, you could hear it. But now all I'm really seeing, if I see her, is like I'm seeing her, you know, making a grunt type face, and it looks like she's straining and not getting anything to come out, but in reality, when I check her diaper, she's got some poop in there. So it's just that it's thicker now, and so you're not necessarily going to hear it when it comes out. Not to say that you won't ever, but I've just had that experience this week. So also along the poo lines, I mentioned last week in my video that it's going to change color based on the foods that you're feeding. So if you're feeding more than one food, it's not necessarily going to be the case about what I'm about to say, but if you're feeding just one food, it's going to be in the color range of that food. So if it's green, it's going to be green. If it's yellow, yellow, blah, blah. So with the sweet potatoes, it was more on the orange reddish side. And when you see that in the diaper, it kind of like raises a tiny red flag and you're like, oh my God, this is kind of red looking. But just keep in mind when you're talking about red in the stool, you're more looking for like bright red, or even black in that case. That means old blood. But anyway, but so just keep in mind if you do see orangish red color poop, like think about what you've fed them that day and, you know, advise based on that. If you have concerns about it, obviously you can contact your pediatrician. I'm not telling you if you see it, don't do anything, but anyway, that's just my 2 cents on that. Yeah, so that's pretty much my advice as far as all that stuff goes. That's kind of our experience this last week with our solids that we've introduced, which happen to be only sweet potatoes this week. But yeah, if you have any questions, you know, I'd be happy to answer the best I can. I'm new at this too, but you know, we can learn together. But yeah, follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. All of those are at New Mama Saga. And I'd love to hear from you guys. Leave a comment, like this video if you you know, got anything out of it, found it helpful at all. You know, definitely subscribe to the video as well, because I'll be doing these about every week or so while I introduce solids and kind of talk about some of the nuances and things that happen as I go through. So that's it for now.